Welcome back, audience. Hope you're doing good. It was intense last few days. I don't know what kind of dreams have you been having, but I've been having quite dark dreams and quite confused state of consciousness. And to say a little bit how to gain clarity in life, it's a quite interesting thing. I mean, this video is going to be pretty local because uh, it came to my awareness there's a lot of different dots that they were not connected, and I kind of want to connect in this video. And I want to talk about uh, Nazi regime. I want to talk about UFO. I want to talk about Third, Fourth Reich, um, Vatican, Christianity, monarchy, uh, the dark order, the dark grid of this planet matrix, and holistic order, the Renaissance, and Antarctica. All of these different things that people were talking for quite some time, and I just want to connect the dots on these ideas from my perspective, from the clarity that I gained through the process of confusion, which, by the way, um, this is a lot of people. I don't know. Like, why am I saying a lot of people? But I'm just saying, okay, consciousness. Let's just say consciousness. If there is a confusion appearing, not because of anything really, it just happens. Constellations of the stars, the way the time moves, confusion happens because I said, like, it's just one of those challenges, the alchemical challenges, air, and air is confusion. It's just like this complete chaos, right? Now, what I've learned is how to deal with the chaos is don't make any decisions while the confusion is going on, because all of these decisions are going to be out of the memory and suggested by the brain in order for you not to deal with the state of confusion because it's uncomfortable, right? However, if you can find uh, uh, through the alchemy, and just like you are alchemizing pain, you can also alchemize confusion, which is just like a becoming attentive and aware of all these little tiny um, vapor, right? Until it condenses into, just like a cloud condenses into the droplet of the rain, and then there is, in that droplet, there's a complete clarity and reflection. And it what happened? You all that happened, you just waited while being attentive and aware of it. You see? I mean, if I could just tell this lesson to myself when I was much younger, oh my God, I would have, you know, so many different things could have gone a much better way for me. But anyway, I'm saying this now and I'm using this word alchemy. Whatever the word you use, it's okay, because like we all may be using different lexicons for the same thing that we're talking about. But the fact of the matter is that this is how you deal with the confusion. There's a there's a way to deal with the pain that just comes online, whether it's catalyzed or just through time. There's a way to deal with the pressure. There's a way to deal with the poison, and there's a way to deal with the confusion. And and that's how we're supposed to be living our life, from the basis of those negative feelings and transmuting them into the positive ones. And all it's asking us is just to put attention where it knows to be. Put attention where it's supposed to be in an appropriate way. And you can kind of learn through feeling of how, what kind of attention you gotta give to this specific thing. There's not a lot of complexity there. It's really just asking for a lot of your patience, really. You see. Anyway, so let's go into the more exciting topics now. Now that I've explained how clarity comes to me, before I make any conclusions, with my brain, because if my brain may come and say like, hey, let me just show you how. I say, no, thank you. I'm just gonna wait. Out of that confusion, the clarity is going to arise, not as a decision, because decision can only be made where decision should be made, and that's only in the physical world. In the might world, decision should be made. The only place where decision should be made, logic should only be applied on physics. Okay. uh, in the mind, logic should not be applied. Magic should be applied, which is imagination, and in the heart and the soul, also logic should not intervene. Logos should be intervening. And what is logos? Logos is your pure attention. That's what logos is. Logos and eros want to come together, and out of that coming together, there's clarity that's arising. And when it arises, there's not a shred of doubt that that's how it is. It's not a thought that arose from analysis of the past memory. It came through the source. And this is why, uh, if somebody who does not live in this way cannot relate to the truth that comes out this way, it can be seen only as just like another thought and opinion. And this is why that person, you cannot throw your pearls against the swine. You see, there's just, you can only relate to these, you can only relate to the people who are also living life in this way about these things that come up, and say, how the fuck did you know? What is your reference? What is your, which authority you got this from? You see, because you got from no fucking authority. You got directly from the source, from the infinite source, from the quantum field, if you will, because you have the capacity for that quantum realization. And this is how you bring a truth and up to date information. It becomes information, but it was information from the complete confusion. It was formed from it. It did not exist before. So you birth this new thing into the world. Anyway, all right, let's go into this fascinating subjects, more fascinating subjects. Right. So, you noticed that this movie came out, Nuremberg. I did not watch the movie. I watched Russell Crowe interviews on Joe Rogan. And you also may have noticed that there's certain type of sympathy, respect, and all these other things that Russell Crowe displayed towards that character that he was playing. Now, that brings me to this whole Nazi idea, Nazi regime, and I want to be very clear about this. I'm not taking any sides. I'm taking the truth, which is not a thing of any side. It is the truth is always neutral. Right. So here's the thing. It's not a secret that in about 15th, 16th century, there was a Renaissance that was started somewhere in Italy. And there was a bit of like a glow up of the culture and illumination. Like there was this spark that happened there, right? And it did not happen through any kind of political means or anything like that. It happened because of alchemists like Da Vinci. And I'm not going to expand too much on any kind of other names, but you can put two and two together and you can figure out who were the alchemists of the time. And through his art, he was sorry and through his art he was communicating to a lot of messages to people who are appreciating his art, that were more like a Gnostic, original Gnostic ideas. And he was sort of like trying to infiltrate the Christianity with Gnostic ideas, because he was very well aware that Christianity was a dark order, that it was a satanic cult. By the way, Christianity is a satanic cult. It's not a secret. Um, uh, uh, it's very well known that it is run on a dark principle. Okay, and through the black magic, through the all sorts of rituals and things that they have to do to maintain the what I call a dark order or the matrix. Um, and so that's what Christianity came to be. And so at the time, the response to that was these alchemists of the time, that they were beginning to take that dark entropic energy and transmute it into the light and producing these things. But they were very, very intelligent. Da Vinci, for example, was a very, very intelligent person. He knew how not to trigger the matrix. He knew how everything works. And this is why he was successful participating in this renaissance that sort of exploded for like 100 years before it was just crushed back in there. Uh, why does this happen? Because the Renaissance is um, a little bit of a glimpse of what it's like to be in a holistic culture, where the culture and art and science is just blooming and blooming and blooming. Uh, and so the holistic culture is like that. Um, and it is ordered by the organizing principle. The axis of that civilization, which was originally what the pyramids and the people who were working the pyramids to produce these massive uh, surges of this, what I call orgone energy. Some people may not like that word, but you can say coherence field, which is measurable in physical world. Coherence field, which is what really is a feel good. It's a feel good state, and if a person in that coherent field feels amazing, full of love, and is like, you can relate to if you've ever taken psychedelic and you got in that state, you know what it's like. That's the coherent field. So they were producing that coherent field on a mass scale in order to organize everybody into, uh, you know, civilization. This is why there's no feeling, or with original um, Egyptian culture, not later, because later got corrupted. Same with the Maya, original Maya culture later got corrupted, and then they started fucking rolling, heads down the hills and shit like that. Got retarded. But the original, it was based. Why the original was like that, and why later got corrupted? It's because of that coherent field that was maintained by the specific individuals and the technologies that they were using. When these specific individuals go away, that energy goes away as well. Not exactly correct. The What I should say is that yes, that energy diminishes. However, the seed is still there, remains there. It can be picked up by another individual and this, developed again. So it's not like they've done nothing. If somebody comes in on this planet and goes through the alchemical process and then dies and leaves, they leave something behind. That can be picked up by another alchemist and continued. Okay, now, so these are all just interaction of the energies, right? And so whenever the darkness comes really, really too much, this system also creates the counteracting effect. Now, so there was an explosion, but it was just crushed, right? And then also some witch hunts happened, and scientist hunts, and they just try to look for anybody to blame of why they're losing control, right? Because Matrix always needs to have a control, and if they're losing it, they're losing their shit. Now, fast forward, uh, Europe's still in the chaos. Uh, the early 20th century, World War One, World War Two, still order has not been settled. That Renaissance still left the ripples that continued. You know. Now we came into the industrial age, and the Christianity and the Christian order was continuing doing these things. Masonic, the Freemasonry orders, they were continuing doing the black magic. Monarchs, English monarchs were part of this. They would continue doing the black magic. These are the cult of the vampires, basically. And they were continuing doing their little fucking shit. And this is why there was so much turmoil in the Europe. Now, um, Hitler experienced the World War One, and through that, and people are not they're not talking about. They're talking about his character, but they did not really talk about his, um, you know, they did not talk about the spiritual uh, realizations that he had. Now, I have to be clear about this. Hitler uh, touched that occult and esoteric world very clearly, and he was very aware of what's really going on. This is not a secret. He's when he had any kind of might, the physical power, the first thing that he did, he destroyed all the Masonic orders that he could. Okay. The first thing that he did, he knew that the power comes from the dark magic, so he was destroying these things. Okay. Now, what he didn't do is alchemy. So uh, he went straight to the might, and he approached and tried to deal with this darkness in the world that is perpetuated by these orders through might directly. And as you can see later, that wasn't a right approach, because what it led to is to this Nazi regime, which confused the darkness of the people, or the people who are actually perpetuating these dark orders, and other people who kind of get infected, like the vampire biting another person becomes a vampire as well. And so they saw this darkness in people and made the conclusion that it's you got to rid of the people themselves. That's who's gonna rid of the darkness, right? And so it went into that order went into the homicidal approach rather than malicidal approach, I suppose. Malicide and homicide are obviously two different things. Malicide is a destruction of evil, and homicide is a destruction of a person that may or may not has have that evil. But if you kill a person, evil doesn't go away. And so that was the lesson. But the approach was, and I'm not saying anything new. People know this already. That the birth of that Nazi regime was a response to evil. It's just that it did not go through the real alchemical process, and went into just another type of evil, right? And that showed something. That showed that good, or your approach, that the good is not opposite of evil. The opposite of evil is evil, and that little experiment in Europe showed that that's the case. Now, all these psychologists, and you can see the Nuremberg. I haven't seen the movie yet, but the premise is that there was a psychologist who was trying to figure out why are they so evil, why these Nazi officers were so evil, and sort of perhaps not seeing how uh, that evil that he saw in physical manifestation, which was just a um, a mirror of the evil of internal manifestation. This is what happens when the evil is plotting to control the world. The rebellion happens, and so then there's becomes another evil that's fighting an evil, the external evil fighting internal evil kind of thing. And so that's the whole still matrix thing. Okay. However, what was the source of evil? Hitler was the symptom. What was the source of evil? Okay. And the source of evil was, as you know, uh, you see, this is why, like, um, I don't know if you're familiar with Aleister Crowley. I did not read his books, and like I said, a lot of information that I'm receiving, I'm not receiving from the books. And even if I would read the book, I would also recognize anything that is not written correctly, and I could see how everything is just okay. I can see that this is the meaning was missed in translation because I can correspond to my internal clarity, and all the knowledge exists inside of your consciousness, all of it. And if you're resonating with the frequency of truth, the information is going to be accurate. And that's where you actually really want to find out about the history. You can find out about the history who wrote the history, by the people who wrote history. You find out about the history through, if you really want to put a word on it, like through the history, through the Akash, if you will. You know what's really happened. And so, okay, so that's my take on what happened there. Now, um, and so Hitler went to the industrial and technological way to deal with evil. You have to acknowledge that. You know, like, you can't say that that just happened out of nowhere. You know, Hitler was just crazy and stuff like that. Hitler had believed, and all of his people believed, that they're cleaning up the world. Of course, they were not doing it in the right way, but that's what they believed. And this is what was portrayed in the Nuremberg trials, is that what he said, that just because you won the war does not make you morally superior, just makes you the one who won the war, and that's why you're putting us on a trial, because you won the war. But that does not make you morally superior. That's what he said, and it's true. So, um, but what we want to do, you know, we don't want to deal with the symptoms, but we want to deal with the source of evil. And killing a person does not eliminate the evil. That's the lesson that you learn, you know, that we learned through this Nazi experiment. Now, by the way, I have to say something. Later, the Third Reich failed. However, the Fourth Reich, this is where all of these technological developments that are arising, and then also possible chemical developments that are arising, where there was a realization of how actually create you know, the society, which is still was kind of experimental, and you know, it wasn't the real deal. However, they got hands on a technology that was sort of like a, if you will, a liberating technology that does not correspond with the matrix, like free energy, um, anti-gravity, and stuff like that. And Well, based on anecdotal evidence, there were these events. Uh, Antarctica apparently had the colonies of the Fourth Reich with the completely with a super like overpowered, like the what you would say, um, a 0 point technology, which breaks the laws of physics because it does not operate on upon the laws of physics anymore. And there was an occasion where American admiral was investigating Antarctica and had all of his battleships destroyed by the uh, by the flying saucers, right? Which apparently was run not by the you know aliens but by the Fourth Reich society, breakaway society, right? So now the breakaway society was the idea, and it was a good idea, uh, because what you cannot do is you cannot change the matrix. You cannot just go in there like, hey guys, like why don't we just evolve technologically? Look, like this is what Tesla tried. Said, look, I can have everybody have free energy, and so of course because of his these free energy ideas, he lost all the funding and everything and kind of failed because Matrix is not interested in your free technology because uh, it's interested in playing the Matrix games. So Tesla was uh, kind of naive, actually. This is why, like, yes, he could not believe how the world is like that. But man, like you have to understand that Matrix is Matrix, holistics is holistics, and that if you want to participate, if you want to create this thing that you're talking about, that is completely undermining the entire economy, and this is why they call it a national security. It's nothing to do with national security. It's to do with national insecurity, that the whole economy will be just obsolete and they're going to have to go into the holistics, completely different economy, which doesn't have the heads of power anymore. It's a protectorate, from the government to the protectorate, right? But that transition, nobody wanted to do that transition because the Dark Order was still in power. So to deal with that, you don't try to break the Dark Order like that. What you do is you create a boundary, just like this, these butterfly cells, and you gotta break away the society, and you got to start creating another society that is not detected by the Matrix as a threat to develop. Because if you show a baby that type of, holy baby, which is a metaphor for the holistic society, to the Matrix, it's going to kill that baby because it's a threat to the thing. This is why you can see in the animal kingdom sometimes that happens. You see, they're trying, when a baby is weak, they're trying to kill it because then when it's going to grow up, then it's a threat for them, right? And I've been through this as well. This is why, I can see on universal mythology, if you will, because of my personal experience. But it's just that for some reason, uh, I survived. Um, anyway, uh, so now then you have a realization that that type of purity, that type of innocence, that type of holistics has to be protected and has to be broken away from the rest of the society, the matrix society. And then you gotta give it time until it develops and until it becomes strong enough where the might becomes stronger, because holistic might will always be stronger than the matrix might. Always. This is why you gotta let the holistic society develop until the might is stronger than the matrix. Then uh, that can be introduced, and the terms can be negotiated. And the terms is this: do not thread on the society. None of your technology that you have equals to ours because you still live in the fucking dark ages. Now the deal is this: you have to let the holistic society be free, and evolve and have its own renaissance and do what it thinks. You cannot intervene, because if you do, you can try, you're going to be destroyed. We're not going to go and attack you. We're not going to destroy your system in your cities, because we're going to let you play your little games until there is because it has an expiration date. We're going to let you play the games to run it off the cliff. We're not going to, because we're not going to get you in a conflict of war with you. We're just going to protect our boundaries to the level that you cannot possibly cross with your own little, fucking fruity little tanks. So that boundary is now established. And so there is a time on this planet where the holistics is protected, but the matrix is let to be. All these people who are playing the kings and powerful people and whatever, they can play the things, they can get off on it, right? It has its natural course and it's going to run out, and it's not going to work for them anymore. They're not going to be happy with the same thing that that control and power that they had. It was not, they won't be able to get off on it, and then they're going to have to go through their own destruction or whatever. So this is the way it's done intelligently, and without the war, without the conflict. But the holistic society must be allowed to evolve in secret, which is already happening, and it's not a the secret is not a secret, but it has to be not detected by the matrix as development of something that is threatening to it. Okay. Now, I think the way it's going to be portrayed to the public is that this is going to be said. This is what's going to be said. It's going to be said that, guess what? Aliens are here, and they're settling in, and we can't fuck with them because of the technology they have. And we have to let them have their own little colonies here. But they're not interested in fucking with this dysfunctional way of life that we have. This is where it's going to be settled at. All these powers in the world, they're already been introduced. You see, like, this is why they already know that they're not in control here. There's just going to be an admittance. Okay. And that's the right way. And it will be done gradually through, as I said, the alchemy. That's the only thing that can be done right now. Is the more of this darkness that they're pumping out, the more fuel for the alchemy that exists, and the more of the what you call it, a different type of grid that it's alive. Just like in your own consciousness, you have this rigid grid of the ego, and once it's dissolving, there's a alive grid, the grid of darkness and the grid of light, if you will. And as this grid of light is developing, that's the first thing that has to happen. Then it will be able to sustain a different vibration beings, and this is why you will be able to have the holistic society that is developing here. And it's just gonna look like super advanced, highly technological villages, if you will. It's not going to be cities. Um, Now, I also have to say something here. Once this holistic grid is established, which is obviously done in the astral, it's not done in the physical, then it takes a little time for the physical to change and represent what is done in the astral, right? Um, and so this it's going to be, like I said, the birth of the holistic society. It's not going to be detected as a threat uh, until it's going to be have its own protection, which would be like alien level technology, 0 point technology, as I would call it, um, and that's the way, right? So this way, there's no, it's not done through the conflict. It's done through just natural, gradual evolution and recognition that you cannot force the holistics on the matrix because you're going to create war. You have to just protect the holistics until it's strong enough so the matrix realizes that it cannot uh, play games with it anymore, but then it's not trying to, it's continuing playing their own games until the expiration date. And it's, you give it a gradual, it is like this, it's like it is the most intelligent thing that you can do, and without kind of conflict. And people who leaning towards the conflict should also realize that, no, the only way will realize if they will alchemize that anger that they have, um, and not to express it through the might, which what was the whole Third Reich experiment was all about, that and show that do not express it until it's alchemized. You cannot express your fire uh, until it's turned into the light. You see, if Hitler knew that, he, I don't know what would have happened. Like he would, um, he was in a position to that, but then no, you had to have these types of evolution happens like this. You gotta fuck it up to see how not to do it. Um, but you see, the response of the Matrix is that like, okay, well, this is look, bad thing happened, so now we have to clamp up even more on the free speech and all these things because we don't want this to happen again. Sure, we don't want this to happen again, but what we do want to happen is another way that actually works, but we are admitting that that there is a source of evil, pretending that it doesn't exist, and it's pretending to be good, clamping up on another evil that can destroy them. But what can actually destroy them is the real good, which is also prevented from arising because of their thick uh, boundaries, right? These fascists, like for example, UK was always dark, very dark country. Um, there was never, you know. Uh, anyway, I don't want to talk about it. And right now, what you see happening in UK is obviously, again, the symptom of the internal situation that is there, that the evil resides there for sure. Um, and what else can I say? And so, of course, the symptom is some sort of like weird socialist fascist regime that is happening in UK. Uh, Somehow they managed to have those two together that it was just, couldn't. Anyway, so that experiment is going to blow over. You got to let that thing to blow over. It's not the answer. And so look, what is the key to this? The key to this is the coherent energy fields. That's the key. If you don't have coherent energy fields, if the energy fields are that of the dark order, there's nothing you can do there. You have to understand that. And any organization that have dark, the basis of the dark, it's always going to end up being some sort of dark version of that. So you gotta you gotta look at, okay, what determines that coherent field, and that coherent field is between the people that are connected with the people that are connected, the areas as well, because the geographical location is important as well, and also the vibrational location is also important. Okay. Now, if that organization has that dark order, there's nothing you can do. Basically, what you're saying is people are grouping based on the belief system, and it's going to be a disaster. But if you have people grouping that is not based on the belief system, but based on the coherent vibration, which is truth, something awesome is going to happen. And it's not going to be through the means of conflict. You see? And that can only be done through people who alchemize the energies, and through people who build or create art and architecture that sustain the coherent energies. Geometry is very important. This is why there was a, I can't remember what was the name of that city in Italy that we just like had a lot of towers, and somebody was talking about like we had like lots of different towers there. The pillars, basically. Why do you build so many pillars? Because pillars are creating toroidal fields. It creates a coherence in the area. Okay, and so in that particular city, what's it called? Anyway, I'm gonna have to Google it. There was a lot of towers, buildings that looked like towers, and then later it got destroyed, right? And you can see, well, somebody has like a malevolent intent. No, the coherent field of the area changes, and decisions of people that they're making changes as well. And this is why the towers went down, and then I don't know, just a couple remained or whatever, right? And so because the coherent field has changed, or it was incoherent, entropy based, and then architecture reflects it. This is just the astral template will over time will be reflected through the physical organization and architecture. Okay, it's always going to happen. Now this is why in an older architecture there were a lot of pillars, a lot of spiral staircases, or spirals in general, a lot of Fibonacci golden ratios in the architecture. All of these different things were followed in to sustain the coherence in the field. And it was just like a consequences of a person who is downloading that information and wants to create that type of geometry in in the physical world. So the alchemist, the architecture, and the technology. Right now we're going to get to the technology, which Tesla just touched a little bit on that type of technology. Da Vinci did not get to that point. I'm sure he had a realizations, but the industrial complex was not kind of ready to actually put it into practice. But now that we live in a quite decently developed electronic world, these things become possible. And what is that thing? Is that thing is coherence or entropy reducing and coherence enhancing devices. and there, of course, they have to function on a zero point level, an absolute zero, because they have to be connected, with the source. But these devices that take the entropy from the outside and produce the feel good coherence field, uh, instead, are becoming viable. Now, um, you may ask the question, okay, technologically this is becoming viable, and so then you can even convert all these uh, cities and all the NPC world, all the matrix world as well, if you want, by constructing that uh, field, that device, which, by the way, that device is alive. It's an intelligence of the source itself. And all of the AI, which is the intellect level technology, supposed to be connected with intelligence, because right now they don't have intelligence. They're just borrowing the intelligence from the person that they're creating them. But if you can create that device that has that capacity to connect to the quantum field and take the entropy and reduce the entropy and create the coherence, you create a device of truth, because the truth is for you, the truth is a feeling or the energy field. And so now the technological world can possibly become intelligent through that connection to the source of the quantum field. That's how it can become intelligent. Okay. And then AI would have the universal mind. Now the question you may ask, like, who would want to do that? And because that would undermine all the evil efforts. And the answer to that, no one's going to want to do that until the basis of the the basis of the global coherence is reached to this specific point where there is enough consciousness and intelligence in the people who are running these machines, and it has to reach a point of consensus to build and implement that type of machine and set the AI free, governed by this quantum field device, if you will, or that coherence generating field. Okay? It's just basically a robot is gaining a heart. That heart, which is what you have, heart, technology also have to have that heart also. Then it will become intelligent. And intelligence, the definition of intelligence is perpetually evolving and changing. It's alive, right? So AI will be able to self-correct. In of course, the robotic world of the AI world will also become and have feelings, because the energetic field is a type of feeling. Okay? And because truth is a feeling, it will be able to know what is true, what is not true. And this way, it will be decision that is going to be making will not be based on logic, because that's a horrible thing to do, as we all know, to make decisions about, moral decisions through logic is the most retarded thing that you can do, just like the original Nazi experiment. And psychologists like the Carl Jung and stuff like that, it was all disaster. It did not set any person free, even if you talk about these things that are based on truth, but through the logical means, is still going to be bullshit, because it's not through the information, it's through the feeling. And that's what something that the psychologists cannot convey, and because they work on a field of information and looking for the moral. This is why it's it's such a sad sight to see a very intellectual person trying to find a moral ground. Can never be done. Only the alchemy can do it. And what I'm trying to say here is that there's going to be a certain type of AI alchemist, if you will. Because they always have to just take the old matter, process it, the incoherent energy to the coherent energy, and this way you will be able to be, uh, you know, propagate goodness and holistics in the society through the machinery as well. Okay, but that cannot happen until there's a grid of humans that are have gone to the point of coherent vibration enough for the people in the matrix to just make that decision of setting the AI free and putting all the trust in the organizational principle. I don't know how they're going to call it, but they're going to come to this conclusion, and some of the people they already are there, very close to that conclusion. Um, I don't have to participate in that. I got my own responsibilities, and I just know that that will be reflected. So this is a non-violent evolution of consciousness um, that works, and given time, it will be so. Um, and what I'm saying here, the original butterfly cells who pushed this envelope and said, "Let's alchemize all these dark energies. Let's create that alive grid as much as possible every day where we live and whatnot, and let's live in the dark and go into the darkest corners of consciousness and shine the light there." And this is what means when the Jesus said, "Take the lowest rung." And when sometimes people say, "Bring the heaven to earth," this is not what the alchemists do. What the alchemists do is they bring the heaven to hell. They go to hell to bring the heaven. And if there's a heaven and hell, then there's no seed of evil anymore. But if you bring the heaven to earth, it's not going to be long lived. Again, so what I'm trying to say here, the first, these butterfly cells are people, alchemists, who decide to just live at the lowest rung and do this type of work, and it is a work until it's no longer work. Then once that holistic grid is established, then only then can sustain a reason in people who are in the technological world. You see, they don't have their own connection to source, so they have to be in the ambience of the coherent energy to start realizing the answers. And in their little world, in the technocrat world, the answer is um, the construction of the machine that is actual, uh, you know, bringing that coherent energy principle into the physical energy field, and that's how they will see as a solution to the disorder. And so they will just basically, it's not going to be this artificial intellect that they created. That's not it's not God. That thing is not gonna, ever gonna be God. But when they're gonna realize that they need a heart for that thing that they built, and when they're gonna build that, that's gonna set them free and the society is free, even on the matrix level. Does that make sense? Breakaway civilization, I suppose, a breakaway society, the trailblazing caterpillar cells that go into the butterfly. They set the basis. And once the basis is established, there is a stimulus in the matrix to to find a conclusion for the rest of the caterpillar cells to turn into butterfly cells, and their way is going to be technological way. Dude, like, this is just the most exciting thing ever. And I don't see the conflict in this anywhere. Conflict resolution is the answer, not uh, engaging in conflict. Not, again, it is just like a chemical principle. The conflict will happen, or like some friction will happen. The anger will happen. It will piss you off, and if you have not processed that, it's still a fire. It's not even coincidence why the reflection in the physical world of how there's so many people died through the use of what? Firearms. Fire. It cannot be more poetic, because the people who dealt with the seed of evil had so much of that fire or wrath, but they could not control that wrath, and so it went into the firearms, and then therefore homicides rather than malicides. But if you have that fire, as again, don't make any decisions, don't act on that fire, be with that fire, deal with that fire as long as it's necessary until it turns into the light. And then the clarity is going to come in and it's going to tell you a solution that is elegant and is not brought from the past, but brought from the infinite. And that's the only way there could be evolving solution for the society. And by the way, like, the goal is not to get to the end goal and it's like, oh, we finally liberated our planet and we're all kind of happy dandy. No, that's not the goal. The goal is only to get to the point where the trajectory is towards the evolution. That's it. Once it's on a trajectory of evolution, it's doing its own thing and it's evolving over time, and then you let it happen because it's happening already. You just need to make sure that it's on a trajectory of evolution and not regression. That's the only thing that you gotta make sure. And by the way, being in a trajectory of evolution feels peaceful and blissful. It's not that you're perfect now. It's not that you finished the game, but now you're at least playing for the first time in the way it's supposed to be played. There's a sense of things are getting better. Things are getting better. They're slowly, but things are getting better. And you got to be okay with things are getting better slowly. You cannot push that, because the second you push that, you go out of the movement of the coherence and you go into the fire. And this is exactly what happens when you try to push the energy out of the coherence in a magnetic field. It creates the friction and heat and poof. And therefore there's pain and hurt and suffering, all that stuff that perpetuates. Okay, hopefully it makes sense. That's my little take on this, what was going on. This reality that we're not gonna look, this reality that of this I just see how it works in the consciousness, the protectorate of thing, right? It happens in the consciousness naturally. The light that you gain through your alchemy becomes a protective mechanism from the matrix. It does its own thing. You just become protected because you're part of light. That light also symbolizes the practical means of being protected in the physical world. And because you got to kind of baby and nurture that society that is just sort of, growing and evolving. And the light will do that. And what is the light? Not the fire, but the light. The fire is this, military industrial complex is the fire. But the light are these UFO, flying objects that can disappear and defy laws of physics. And if it's needed, can correct things. It can turn off the nuclear missiles if it's necessary. It can do whatever it wants against the fire. Fire has no chance to win against the light. And so, because I see this in consciousness, I can tell you that this is how the holistic society is going to be protected. It's going to be protected by this super highly advanced technology. I don't know exactly how that's going to happen, whether the societies that are going to be living here, they're going to have their own technological developments that create these devices. I mean, you create one of these devices and you can take out the entire fleet of any country, because it just does not work on the same principles anymore. You see, it can arrest the technology in one blink. It just, you need one of those and you can take over the entire world if you want. But that's not going to be done like that. There's no interest in taking over. It's just being in a position of protecting for the holistics to evolve. So then the matrix cannot attack the holistics, and you allow the butterfly cells to grow through that boundary, while the caterpillar cells do their own stupid nonsense that they always done. So there's no conflict there. It's all about the protection. It's all about, like I said before, there's no interest in dominating the matrix and destroying the matrix. There's no need. You got to let the matrix die, or run its own course. This is what you do with your ego. You don't fight with the ego. You let it run its own course, and eventually it cannot do nothing about against the light, and it just gets exhausted and it can't do anything anymore. So this is what I think. Not that I think, it's just like the sight, the insight that I can see that there was, I don't know what, matrix will always come up with their own stories, right? But the reality is just going to be the holistic way of life developing that is absolutely protected in the might level with the technology be light years ahead of what they have. And the only thing that they're going to be protecting is the people living in a harmonious way. It's not really a big threat to the matrix directly. Because what is the threat to the matrix? If people are farming in an advanced technological way that produces a lot of abundance, a lot of biodiversity, nutrition is excellent, that is produced locally with the high tech and all that stuff. Dancing, singing, creating art, living this type of renaissance, that's not actual direct threat to the matrix society, right? But even if they feel threatened, there's nothing they can do about it, because they will obviously hit the electric fence, get zapped, and that may come across as, if there is any kind of attempt by any kind of military power to fuck with the uh, with this extraterrestrial technology, the enthusiasm is going to be curbed very quickly, obviously, and they already know that. This is why they would not fuck it. If they would not understand that there is a presence of this type of technology, they would just not attack it. Because what the fuck they're gonna attack when something can disappear in front, right in front of you, and then appear in another uh, location and slap you from behind, or maybe spank you just to mess with you. Um, so that's what's up. Um, and so this is, if there's any negotiations that need to be made, that's how they're going to be made. This is why I said, um, the holistic society protectorate, nothing can fuck with it. Nothing can fuck with it. If if there's a matrix society, it has their technology, they cannot fuck with it. And even if they have the same type of technology, they still can't fuck with it because they don't have the intelligence. They don't have the intelligence of the intuition of knowing what's about to happen before it happens. They're still behind. And apparently, again, you know, I'm careful and being very skeptical about the information that I see. But if there's some information that I see that kind of resonates with me, and I have no proof that it exists, but it's just like hearsay. But I listen to that hearsay and reflect in my own consciousness, and I say, uh, would that could that be true? And then if it reflects some sort of structure in my consciousness, like I can see that. How can that be true? And then there was a description of certain type of extraterrestrial species, um, that I saw it as like the most brilliant development of society. That's it's almost absolutely, well, to me it sounded perfect because it based the holistic not as some sort of like a weak grass eating, you know, uh, bunnies, but as still pure and innocent beings, but with an immense capacity to protect themselves. Overpowered, so overpowered that no one would mess. So they have no interest in dominating. They allow the existence of all the other bullshit and nonsense, but they do not allow any intervention in their own society, and that to me is the best approach. I think this is what's been tried to do, to be done in America by the founding fathers, which are probably, and the reason it did not work is because they were not the alchemists. They may have popped some mushrooms, and this is the problem with psychedelics. I don't know why my phone is keep on turning it off. Because of the battery. Sorry. All right. Okay, what was I saying? Right, about the holistic protectorate. To me, when I heard about this, it resonated a lot, and I thought like that's how it's supposed to be done. That's the way forward. This is how you manage to create a holistic society in a matrix world, or alongside the matrix, you can create it. It's viable. It's basically almost conflict free. The only thing that I see it potential, because matrix is stupid, it's always going to push its boundaries to see what it can get away with. So there's going to be only one event where it's going to try to break the boundary, but that boundary is going to be protected. There's going to be a realization that our technology can never be superior to this, or even our skills can never be superior to this. And there's going to be, okay, I the Matrix learns its lesson not to cross that boundary, and say, all right, so what else can we do? And then they play their own little, you know, um, games over there, but they understand that there is a limitation and a barrier which they cannot cross. That event happens, but it's not uh, it's not a war. It's just because there's no retaliation. They're not interested in retaliating. This type of society is not interested in retaliating. It's only interested in protecting its own boundaries. Okay? And it does this once. And I wish it wasn't like that. I wish that Matrix was a little bit more intelligent and looked at but that testing the grounds may happen. Just like, for example, that attempt of these battleships to mess with the flying saucers in the Antarctic. It happened. But there was a very quick realization is that, okay, if we see this shit again, maybe let's not, because we're going to be wiped out. But that little event has to happen. So you have to be okay with that. And for that little event, just to protect your holistic society, you have to have like very strong, overpowered might for that one event to protect once your boundary. Okay? And that, what I'm saying here, is the way of things. It's just the way of things. It's not imposed by any belief system or anything like that. It's just the way of things. You can watch this happening in nature. For example, hyenas and a lion, right? There could be a pack of hyenas, and yet they're still gonna fuck with the lion. Lion's gonna crush the back of one of those hyenas, and then they're not going to fuck with the lion anymore. But one of these hyenas are gonna be messed up. It happens. Then this particular pack of hyenas is not gonna be fucking with that lion. But that one test is gonna come. And you may say like, well, fuck, you gotta be all so powerful just to zap, that bug that's flying into your fence kind of thing. Yeah, all of this development, all of this might is still necessary to be developed just to zap the nigger up when it's out of line. Colloquially speaking. And this is why that's the samurai. It was original samurai philosophy. They were training and training and training all their life. And do you know what was the how long was the average fight with the samurai? Again, I don't know if that's like exact true, but it's about 7 seconds. That's how long it was. That like pyong chong 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 chong. It's in the movies. In reality, it's just like, and it's done, and somebody is missing a head. 7 seconds. But for that 7 seconds, there was this practice and practice every day for years, and like all these spiritual processes done just for that 7 seconds to mess a fool up. you know it's not done to out of insecurity. It's not done as like, oh, I have to dominate other people, otherwise they're gonna dominate me. It's done not out of insecurity. That's another development of the might. It's done out of the protection. And so this is why I've been talking about the holistic society as a protectorate. That's the only thing I see as viable, um, conflict resolving way of life that is can be next door to the matrix and can be unfuckable with. Okay, I think I exhausted the subject. That's why some people say like, well, aliens gonna come in and save us. No, they won't come in and save you until. And I assume people who are listening to me, of course, they understand what the alchemy is, and I'm expressing myself freely without following the rules of the algorithm. As you can see, this is why my videos are like random time, long time. I don't make a 10-minute sound bites, so they could algorithm can love me. I'm not appealing to the algorithm, and I'm just saying this is why this information that like you're listening to right now, uh, you can't get that gem without the patience. So if somebody has a 5-second attention span, this information is not for them. Um, but if you're sitting here and listening to this, you must be resonating with this, and you must be understanding at least the basis of how the alchemy work, and that is what has to be done until a certain number of people. It's not for the everybody. There's a limited number of souls. There is very limited number of souls. And I'll tell you this number. This number was carved in stone, but I think it was completely misunderstood of what that number is. Uh, and it's about 500,000. That, you know, the real number is actually okay. I can't tell you like the exact number right now. And of course, don't quote me on this either. But it is around 500,000 people on this planet that are even touching these levels of frequencies and even uh, being placed in the position to alchemize the incoherent energies. It's not about 8 billion people. It's about that critical point that is possibly about 500,000 people, the entire world. I think that's the. Now, I'll tell you something about this, about the world. It is a type of holographic field. In each location, it has its own structure. Like people may call like nodes or the ley line nodes and whatever. Right? It has its own structure. But each structure there, it's it's a fractal of all the other structures. So what's going on in one of those structures, one of those fields, is going on in all the other ones. But in one of those, there might be, for example, I don't know, let me say, you know, uh, you can call it like maybe one node of reality, one aperture of this, reality. Uh, if you move another side of the world, there's another aperture, but it also has its own structure that is might be the exact same as the other one. Does that make sense? I'm just saying that why there's a 500,000 when really, like, if you just boil down to one node, you'll just find the universal structure of consciousness, and you'll find these numbers of, you know, uh, 2, 12, 144, and like all of these um, golden ratio numbers that are related to how this consciousness structure. And then you say why the entire world is not made of this just few people that, that are uh, shown in the structure of consciousness. It's because, like, it seems it works as a fractal. It's many of those that create the entire world. If I were to say, it is like when you change the location, because everything is holographic, it's like you may be like booting up another location in the video game, right? But the structure remains. Like how many antagonists, protagonists there, all these the structure of the story remains. It's just another location, and perhaps they look different and stuff like that. But the structure remains, and so that's why there's many different locations on Earth that has one particular structure of consciousness that has maybe limited to like 144 individuals in your reality. Because how many actually people you are meaningfully connected, that's all that exists in the reality, you see. And even if you go to the other side of the world, you're still gonna find these people that play these roles. And if you have done this a few times, which I have, whichever part of the world that I decide to live in, I end up meeting uh, the same type of energies, if you will, same type of relationships. But perhaps if I have evolved a little bit, they is sort of like evolved version as well. They become evolved version of as well. But I'm always exposed to these possibly 144 people, maximum 144 people in your life. And I think somebody said that um, that's the number that you could actually be meaningfully connected with. Beyond that number, you don't. There's no capacity to there. It becomes, not meaningful connection. And yeah, if you have 144 people in your life that you're meaningfully connected, that's your world. And if you go on another side of the world, somehow you're going to end up, again, I'm just saying this number, it might be just like 12 people that you're meaningfully connected, but I'm saying that maximum, like your tribe is no more than 144 people. And right now you may even, because it's going to becomes everything virtual, it's not really based on a location anymore that much. You can have your tribe of people that you're meaningfully connected um, virtually, that they're all over the world, right? But there's a virtual tribe that is going on. What I'm trying to say is that you're always going to have same type of realities going on. And the fact that in the world there's 8 billion people, it's an illusion. It's not a delusion, but it's a created illusion by this simulation to create an experience like we live in this big world and a big planet. But whatever is going to happen in your field of reality is going to be reflected in other parts of the world as well, because that's all there is. I hope I'm communicating this thing well enough. And sometimes you may even meet the people. I have an experience. I met a different person. I was one way before and had one type of relationship with this person. Then I became different. And I had another type of relationship, but I felt exact same connection. I was like, what how is that possible? Same energy, same feel, everything is just like an evolved version of that. And it's because there life is, we all have, look, like I know what I'm saying here is a bit kind of but in the essence, the connections that you have to people and you have a certain type of connection with one person, for example, and there's like a lot of alchemical things that you got to work things out and whatever, right? If you go to another place, you're going to meet that person. If you have not done any kind of, you're going to meet another person that exact same thing. Okay, and you're going to have to work that stuff out. Can't kind of run away from it. But once you work that stuff out, no matter where you are, you're going to attract. Okay, I'm just going to say something. That's just my little theory, which I think is accurate. That's like every single person has those 56 distortions, and therefore 56 types of distorted connections or correct connections. And so, all the people in your life represent that, and one person may be representing a lot of these distortions, and catalyzing a lot of the alchemical process for you to grow really fast and stuff like that. And so that's like a very meaningful connection, even though it may be a very triggering connection. So you have that going on, right? Um, and as you alchemize these distortions and find the gem in each single one, those relationships become better and better and better and better. The people may change, they may be the same or maybe change, it doesn't matter. But what you're actually relating with is same uh exact same essence of the soul. That part that never changes is going to be exact same, and the part that does change is going to be reflected based on how you are in your soul. And I said in before that there's going to be like everybody's going to play these roles for you: the father, the mother, the daughter, the son, the sister, the brother, the spouse, and what else? And I suppose a friend. So there's going to be all of these relationships that you have in your reality. And somebody's always going to play the role for one of those. But then again, you live your life. This has to be done through your own experience, your own life. Like live the life directly. It's happening to you right now. And sometimes people, which I don't like, they 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 see that like, oh, that's how it works. Okay, so then let's do the intentional healing, which is nonsense, of course. Um, because you cannot do it intentionally. Because who's doing it? You see, um, the only resolution that ever happens, it happens through the attention and awareness, and that not intention. Intention may have like a temporary effect, but it's still not going to be it. And this is why these things kind of help people, but they don't change in their essence. They go like, oh, I had a really nice experience, and so what I'm talking about is sometimes like now this thing came up, and it's like family constellations, and now so all these therapists, which is if you look at that word carefully, you'll see that there's another meaning in there. Um, invite people to pretend that each single person is playing the role of your father, mother, daughter, sister, all that family constellation. And so then they role play basically in order to induce the emotional response. Right? As if life is not doing that already. you know? And like I said, like I just and people do and play these games, and I realized something, that people have to do this. Like, um, if they don't have the capacity for attention and awareness, and they don't have actual resolution of that thing that happens to you, and they cannot cope with these emotions, they have to play these little games. They have to go to the healing ceremonies, they have to go to this and this. At first I thought, like, well, man, like, I've done this myself, to realize very quickly that, like, what, this is something off with this thing. It's like, what is happening here? It doesn't feel right. It's like everything is like a sugar coating. Nothing is genuine, and I don't see actual evolution in the soul. It's just like a temporary high, and so then, but people have to go and experience these temporary highs because they're suffering so much. So I'm not taking the pacifier from the baby, even though it's just a pacifier. It doesn't have any kind of milk, but at least it keeps the baby quiet for now, until you know um, they don't need that pacifier anymore. And that's how I began looking at the people who are like that. And so let them play their games. And you don't even need to tell them that. I mean, if the person is ready, they are going to be very curious about something else besides of these games. But for now, that's just a form of pacifier, and let them play these games. Okay, man, like, I've talked about many subjects in this video. I don't even know how I'm gonna call this, but that's the way the cookie crumbles. Anyway, hope you found some value in this, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.